Well, wild winds sent a lot of trees down in our area, but it's doubtful that anybody had a crazier story or night than Judy Wellard. The 79-year-old Springfield woman was literally jolted out of bed when her ceiling caved in on her as a tree landed about a foot above where she was sleeping.
I was awakened by essentially having my ceiling fall on me.
She had been fast asleep in her Springfield home until this large oak tree fell right into her upstairs master bedroom, landing about a foot above her.
I got up on my knees, actually, and pushed some of the pieces away.
Of the ceiling?
Of the ceiling. I had to crawl on my hands and knees to get out around the door because it had come off its hinges, and then I just came downstairs.
This is the tiny space between slivers of wood she somehow crawled through to get to her stairwell. She didn't have glasses or shoes, and it was very dark.
You respond quickly, I think, to something like that, and you don't necessarily take in everything. You know you need to get moving, you need to get out of there, and that's what I did.
Somehow she survived it all without even a bruise.
This is my big injury.
Wellard is set to turn 80 years old next month, and even though her house now needs a lot of work, in many ways it feels like her birthday present came a bit early.
I think I'm just amazingly lucky. Just amazingly lucky. My house is a mess, but I'm not.
Such a neat lady. She says she isn't even sore. Now, Wellard is a mother of 9 and a grandmother of 9, and she says she's always considered herself very lucky, but certainly this takes it to a whole new level. Keep in mind, that tree that hit her house, it hit with such force, it not only crashed through her roof, but it then went through the floor of her bedroom, so you can actually see parts of it sticking through the ceiling on the first floor when you look up. I mean, just really an incredible thing. Back to you guys.
Well, you never know what's going to happen when you wake up in the morning. We watched the news clip of Judy Wellard, our music director's sister, wake up with a big tree crashing in her bedroom ceiling and stopping a foot from her face. The fallen tree destroyed the roof and bedroom, but she walked out with just a small scratch on her elbow. Judy said, "I'm amazingly lucky." Some of her family, when they heard it, they said, "Thank God." And her brother-in-law, Dick, always the theologian, posed the interesting and important theological question: was Judy's escape divine intervention or good luck? Every day we also hear of things that don't go so well. The first year I was at Trinity, we returned home from church on Boxing Day to learn that 40,000 people had been swept away and killed by an earthquake-generated tidal wave in Japan and the other Asian countries, and that the final toll would be much higher, which indeed it was, surpassing 230,000 people. Divine inaction or bad luck? In the face of such destruction and devastation, people ask the age-old question, why? If there is a God, why would a loving God allow this to happen? Len Lesser, a newspaper columnist in The Londoner and a Christian, wrote, "I have a burning question. Where was God? Why did he not intervene and still the waters?" The question is not just a Christian question. Salem Mansour, a columnist in the Free Press and a Muslim, as well as a professor of political science at Western, asked, if there is a God, how could he will such evil into a world of his making? It's a question most of us ask at some time or other in our lives. A tsunami is not required. I think of a woman who told me that when she was 11 years of age, her father got cancer, and she went to her church at noontime 5 times a week for several months and prayed for him to be healed. But he died in the bloom of his life, and she decided God must not exist. In my experience and the testimony of history, since the 5th century, the church has been spectacularly unhelpful in facing and addressing the challenge of death and suffering. I can't speak for other religions, although my reading is that most of them are in the same boat. Spectacularly unhelpful. God is so often presented as the one who chooses to intervene in the affairs of humankind, speaking worlds into existence, casting Adam and Eve out of the garden, destroying all humanity save Noah's family in a flood. God, it would seem, even gives to people like Moses the power to part the sea, Joshua to stop the sun, and Jesus the power to walk on water. But that's not our experience of God. That's not our experience of life. And so, left with no other options, our children and grandchildren have left the church in droves. The earlier followers of Jesus knew better. They learned the hard way that God doesn't control everything that happens. They learned that terrible things happened. The most unexpected terrible things happened. There Jesus died and was killed on a cross. And what's more, they knew very quickly that standing up for people who were not being treated fairly, as Jesus asked them to do, would bring them hardships, bring them persecution. So there is luck in the world, and no religion or philosophy can protect us from experiencing bad luck. It's a part of life. But the Jesus movement found its faith in their experience of resurrection. Not a physical resurrection. In today's reading, the first reference to resurrection in the Bible, Paul says it's not physical. The physical must give way to the spiritual. Every resurrection story has a detail in it that lets us know that the resurrection is not about Jesus' physical corpse coming back to life. Physical corpses do not walk through walls, do not walk through doors, do not disappear. The resurrection is a spiritual reality. It is the experience of life transcending death, of Jesus' Spirit multiplying in his followers, of goodness overcoming evil, of Jesus' vision of an evolving kingdom of God continuing to this very day and beyond. We are most miserable, Paul writes, if there is no resurrection. Paul knew about the dark, difficult experiences of life. And he knew that doing the right thing, the love and the justice thing, can cost us our lives. He too was executed by Rome. But there is resurrection, he says. It is at the core of our good news. God is present when bad things happen, present in our souls, present in the love and care of others that always comes our way. In the midst of good luck and bad, God is here, evolving a universe, moving chaos into peace, healing, overcoming the bad, transcending even death itself. None of us will avoid death, but we don't have to fear it. Death is swallowed up in victory. O death, where is your victory? O grave, where is your sting? But thanks be to God who gives us the victory, and we see it and experience it through our Lord Jesus Christ. I was doing a funeral last month for a wonderful guy who was a mountain climber. He died at 55 years of age because an avalanche killed him in Alberta. His family was struggling with the question of why would God let this happen? I offered them another way of looking at it. I acknowledged that this chaos and pain of Mike dying too soon was one of the reasons that people don't believe in a higher power. We were taught that God is all-powerful and is in control of the details of our life. But the nature of God's power is different than what we were taught. The stories of the laws of nature being set aside in the Bible are the special effects and the symbolic language that the storytellers used then as they use in movies today to keep the kids' attention. They're not the meaning of the story. They never are. Not even the Creator can set aside creation's laws of gravity and trajectory. Our universe is a dance of randomness and order, of chaos, which moves back into exquisite harmony. God's power is the creativity that turns chaos into harmony, that has evolved a planet teeming with life and beauty from the raw energy of a Big Bang 15 billion years ago. We ask ourselves the question, why do bad things happen? When the only logical question is, why do good things happen? Why should they? Why is there life at all? All this life from raw energy that if it was a little warmer would have simply remained in dust with no planetary systems or galaxies. Or just a little cooler and that energy would have collapsed back in on itself into another black hole. Why is it that energy and matter on planet Earth, rocked by the tides and warmed by the sun, in one monumental moment in time, created a single cell of life? Why? Why should that happen? And that life continued and evolved into living beings? Why should life exist at all on a planet of tectonic plates floating in molten lava? Why should that first organism of life evolved into a planet teeming with such biodiversity of life? And why should a part of that life force evolve into God-like people who are self-aware, who can make choices based on values, people who throughout history regularly sacrifice and give their lives for the well-being of others and for generations yet to come? Why don't the wealthy and their weapons always win? We shouldn't be surprised when bad things happen. We shouldn't be surprised that wind and gravity knocked a tree into Judy's house, or that an earthquake created an avalanche that took Mike's life. We are invited to live in awe and thanksgiving and confidence that come what may, life will go on, and that love goes on, and that evil and destruction never have the last word. It should come as no surprise that nature itself is amoral. It is no respecter of whom it kills. It should come as no surprise that disasters happen. Why should they not? Given the extremes of heat and coldness in the universe, the flux and fluidity of matter and energy, cataclysmic events are part of the fabric of existence. But why should things work out? Why should there be perfect harmony? Why should our lives exist? What surprises and delights me is that life and love are so possible. These are the signatures of God. And if life and love are possible, then everything good is possible as well. Which is why in the midst of tragedy, people rise up to share in God's ministry of healing and reconstruction. That is why in the midst of the tragedy in Asia, the world united in its concern for people and families we'll never know. We heard stories of children giving money they'd saved for a long time for some purpose, giving it to people they'd never see. We saw governments shamed, inspired, cajoled by their citizens to move from token gestures of aid to expressions of generosity. We even heard a confirmed report of a woman holding 2 babies amidst the rush of a river, being pulled to safety by a 12-foot python snake. A snake within the midst of all the destruction was moved to preserve life rather than to profit from it. Luck and providence dance together. Random chance and the care of God's embrace cohabit together. We are mistaken to despair in the midst of this world's problems and challenges. For the presence of God is always seen in the love and the goodness of humanity that is just a few inches from the surface, always on the verge of being released. We have been made, as the scriptures say, a little lower than the angels. Our scriptures tell us we're made in the image of the Divine One. Our souls come from that aspect of the universe that is the source of love and kindness, generosity and fairness, peace and evolving consciousness. We can choose the dark side, but our divinity is our birthright, and it's available if we want it. and we'll invest in it. Our spirits flow from that spirit which permeates every ounce of our being, every cell, that moves the being of the universe toward greater levels of love and connection and consciousness and complexity, and makes healing and new life possible, that swallows up pain and death in victory. Seen this way, God is not the all-powerful being outside the universe who determines every action. God is creation and life and love itself. That part of creation constantly evolving life and us toward goodness and wholeness, come what may. That being said, we will all know something of the nighttime of pain. We will all have our doubts and at times lose hope. These are the times when we're surrounded by others who hold that hope and that faith for us. These are the times we look at the letters of our life through our tears and we read the message that God is nowhere. But as we are held, we begin to see that God is now here. During those times, rather than judge us, the mystery we call God holds us as we cry, holds us through our despair until the light of new day dawns and our teary eyes clear and we behold a new pattern of love which reads, God is now here. In closing, I'm reminded of a Christmas party I attended a few years ago. I introduced myself to a fellow named John. And he made a point of telling me he was an atheist. And so I said, well, I'm an atheist too. He said, you can't be an atheist, you're a minister. I said, I'm an atheist because everything you reject about God, I used to be taught too, and I don't believe it anymore. He paused to think about that, and then he moved on to other guests. Later in the evening, we were chatting again, and John recounted a very difficult time in his life 12 years previously. Here's what he said. Paul, when my marriage ended 12 years ago, my world was destroyed. I was a broken man, and I honestly believed to the core of my being that I would never be happy again. I just wished I were dead. But the thing of it is that now, these years later, I am happier than I ever was before. My life has unfolded in a way I never could have imagined, and I feel so lucky and so thankful. At that point, I put my hand on John's shoulder, and I looked him in the eye, and I said, John, I can say what you just said. That's how I felt when my first marriage ended many years ago. And I have to tell you that whatever it is in the universe that is able to take our lives and the disasters we go through and turn them into something more beautiful and more wonderful than we ever could have imagined, whatever that is what I give my life to. That is what I worship. That is my God. And he nodded with new understanding and agreement. Friends, that's why we gather here every week, to be reminded of grace, to be reminded of the giftedness of our lives. Life does not owe us anything. We owe life everything. In good times, like Judy being spared, or in bad times, like dying in an avalanche. God is with us, love is with us, and death is not the end. In life and death and life beyond death, may our eyes be open to the mystery, the marvel, the majesty, and the miracle of continuing, ever-evolving life and love. O death, where is your sting? O grave, where is your victory? Thanks be to the one who gives us the victory. Thanks be to God.